Alright, I'm going to do an example here of sketching the graph of a tangent or cotangent function, problem type 2. We have y equals negative 5/2 tangent of 1/2 x. And so if I go over here on my paper, my normal values for just the plain tangent, I have negative pi over 2 has an asymptote, negative pi over 4 is negative 1, 0, 0, pi over 4, 1, pi over 2 has an asymptote. So first of all, we have to figure out here that we have 1/2 x in the parentheses. We're going to set those equal to each of our x values here and solve. And so if I have 1/2 x equals negative pi over 2, in order to solve this, I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. So if I times by 2, cancel, cancel, x is going to equal negative pi. So negative pi is going to have my asymptote for my first point. On my next one, 1/2 x is going to equal negative pi over 4. Again, I'm going to times 2. Here I can reduce, so I get negative pi over 2. That was at negative 1, but because my amplitude is negative 5/2, if I take negative 1 times negative 5/2, I'm going to get a positive 5/2. And so I'm going to have positive 5/2 there for that point. My third one, 1/2 x equals 0. I'm going to times by 2 times by 2. 0 times 2 is still going to be 0, and so I'm going to have 0, 0 there. The next one, 1/2 x equals pi over 4. Again, I'm going to times by 2. That's going to reduce down, so I get positive pi over 2. Here's my thing again. My y value normally is 1. I'm going to take 1 times that amplitude, which was negative 5/2, and so I'm going to get negative 5/2 for my y value of my point. And then the next one, 1/2 x equals pi over 2. I'm going to times by 2 again, canceling. I just get pi. Pi is going to be at my asymptote. So what you have to watch for is where you have your negative 1 and your positive 1, because you have to multiply that times the asymptote to find the new y value once you've multiplied, in this case, by 2. And so those are the points that you're going to have. If I sketch my graph, I'm going to be back here because I got to be at negative pi. So if this is negative pi, that's negative pi over 2, 0, positive pi over 2, and positive pi. We have an asymptote here at the beginning. We have an asymptote here at the end. 0, 0 is a point. At negative pi over 2, we're at positive 5/2. I'm going to just say it's right there. At pi over 2, we're at negative 5/2. And so my curve is going to curve through here and go down. I can't draw very well. It looks something like that. If we look at the one on the computer, then they've sketched it out a little farther than I sketched it out. If I slide this over here, let it focus. So negative pi, there was my asymptote. Positive pi, there's my other asymptote. It crossed at 0, 0. At negative pi over 2, I'm at positive 5/2. And at positive pi over 2, I'm at negative 5/2. And when you hit your graph, you will have something that looks like that.